Hello.
Hello.
To anyone, is there anybody out there? We have been stranded for days. Hello. My name is Tegan Ansley, and I am joined here with
Amanda Thomas.
Ooh, baby. And we are here starting a podcast of conversations, and this is a first test of kind of see if we want to continue this on.
Yes, let's see if we want to podcast all the time.
Every hour of our entire lives.
Record everything.
So a little bit of a background about us. Amanda and I study at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I study fibers and art therapy.
And I study photography as well as taking an art therapy class right now.
Oh, yes. So the reason we started this podcast is currently I'm in an art therapy class entitled Disability Studies Reimagining the Body, and we have this assignment to we have this opportunity to attend an event, and then from that kind of do a reflection and on that event, and one of the ways we can do that is through a podcast. So I was really excited for the opportunity to start that and kind of test out what a podcast might feel like, and Amanda and I both thought maybe this is something we might want to continue, so that's why this is kind of a test run.
Yes, because I do think that we have some really nice conversations, and you know what? Maybe it would be good to archive them, even if it's just for ourselves.
Even if we just look back at them ourselves.
Yes.
Also, prior to this recording, we had almost like a 2-hour conversation, so we were like, we should probably start recording instead. What we're going to be talking about is an event we went to called the Unlonely Film Festival, and we attended this event on Monday, February 25th. It was held from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the Gene Siskel Film Center located in Chicago, which is where we currently are, by the way. And so we're just going to jump right in and kind of discuss about this event and our thoughts and perspectives, our experience, who was there, what was shown, all that good stuff. The Unlonely Film Festival, it was organized by the Foundation of Art and Healing, and it was in association with SAIC. Two of the presenters at the event were Jeremy Nobel, who is the president of the Foundation of Art and Healing, and Joseph Behen. Please forgive me to all of these people who I may completely horribly mispronounce their name. But Joseph Behen is the Executive Director of Counseling, Health, and Disability Services at SAIC. SAIC being the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. So those were two of the presenters who kind of introduced the event to the audience members. The Gene Siskel Film Center is this cinema movie theater that shows kind of independent films.
Yeah, independent films.
Yeah. I was about to say non-traditional films, but I was like, I don't know the word for that. So the Foundation of Art and Healing put out this project called the Unlonely Project, and a short description of this project that I took from their website reads, in response to the growing public health concern of social isolation and loneliness, the Foundation for Art and Healing has launched the Unlonely Project. The goal of the signature initiative is to broaden public awareness of the negative physical and mental health consequences of loneliness associated with a wide range of living conditions and circumstances, while also exploring and promoting creative arts-based approaches to reduce the burden. And more of this information of the Unlonely Project can be found on their website, artandhealing.org, which is where I learned more about the project as well. So the event was set up where they had a set of panelists in addition to the presenters. So the panelists were Bree Becks, who is in the grad program in art therapy at SAIC, Jacqueline Teresa is on the Women's Board endowed. She's the Women's Board's endowed chair of learning and public engagement at SAIC, and George Monteleone, who studied cognitive science at Northwestern University, and as well as he studied art and tech and film through the MFA program at SAIC. So the order of the event kind of went where they introduced the event, introduced the panelists, and then they showed three short films. One panelist kind of gave their thought and perspectives on those three films, and then they showed another set of three films, and then another panelist talked, another set of three films, the last panelist talked, and then all panelists came together to kind of share their collective knowledge and experiences and thoughts on the film shown, and then they had audience participation with comments and questions, and then a final film was shown. So the films that were shown were Darren Durlach, film Throw, Emery, My College Transition, Andreas Highcad, Nuggets, David Terry Fine, Can You Read My Lips, Dylan Tuchilo, Ralph is the name of the film, Sophia Olin's film Knit Me Some Happiness, G. Lee's film Drawings for My Grandchildren, Will Mayo's film First Night Out, Ivan Cash's film Agent of Connection, and then the final film was Andrea Dorfman's How to Be Alone. And there's also more information on these films as well on artandhealing.org, and then they also have a YouTube channel that is called the Unlonely Project, where these films as well as multiple other films can be found. So that was kind of the breakdown of how the event went down, and then we're just going to kind of jump into some questions and discussions of thoughts that we had on the event. So I'm going to ask Amanda, from these films that were shown, why do you believe these particular films were chosen to be represented at this event?
Okay, so I do feel like they did a good job at showing a good variety of themes. Like, some of them were definitely sadder than others, and some of them were kind of funny, and then others, like, really did make you happy. But overall, they all made you think about, like, the concept of being lonely in different ways. And that was really powerful to see how that can translate into so many different variables, because for everybody I think it's really different. You experience loneliness in different ways. So I think that they did a good job representing that, and that's probably why they showed all of them. But overall, the theme was loneliness, or an experience of community, I would say, or like connection with others.
Yeah.
Even if that was like the disconnection with others.
Yeah, it was really cool to see the different perspectives of maybe how loneliness can occur, and then how it can kind of be disrupted through community or connection.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like some of the films also talked about loneliness in the sense of segregation.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of inaccessibility to connection.
Yeah.
Is there one particular film that stood out to you? And if there is, maybe give like a
Yes.
background on what the film was about.
So, I mean, they were all really nice, and I want to say that they stood out to me in different ways, but the one that for sure affected me was the film Nuggets, because it's just an animated film, and it was very short, and almost at first you kind of didn't really understand what was going on. There was a little character, and I guess he was like kind of a bird, and he was, walking on this line, and then he's super happy and just living his life, and then he kind of started he found this substance, I guess, and started like
A little nugget.
Yeah, drinking it. And the substance basically made him, in this pure bliss state where he could fly, and music was so happy, and then afterward it kind of like broke him down. So the next time he went to drink the substance, he would fly for a shorter amount of time and be broken down for a longer amount of time, and then eventually at the end he does, I guess what it would be like the substance breaks him down to the end. So that one was really sad for me, because I have a lot of personal history with my family being involved in substance abuse, and I think that was a really powerful way to depict that. And I'm not sure that if you don't have experience personally with substance abuse, or maybe like a loved one that's experienced substance abuse, you would fully understand it. But I also think that it could translate. I was kind of thinking about this, how it could translate not only to substance abuse. I mean, I think that we all have like one thing that's not really that good for us, but yet we keep like turning back to it, even if it is like a toxic thing in our lives, and how that could, like, we know that we shouldn't be interacting with it, or it could also be a person, I think, a lot of the times. And so in a lot of ways I think that could connect to a lot of different people, and maybe that's just the way that I took that film because of my personal history. But yeah, that one it made me so sad at the end, and I was a little kind of not prepared to feel that much while I was sitting in a theater with people.
Yeah.
And it did make me feel a little lonely, actually, because I was like, I myself have this horrible thing that nobody like knows about, but then actually one of the panelists got up and said that she really personally connected with the film, and then I didn't feel that lonely, because I was like, there's so many other people who have experienced this, and no matter what situation you're in, there's always going to be someone that you can connect to, usually.
Yeah, definitely. And whether you, I guess, are able to communicate or share or swap stories with somebody, even those subtle hints of like, you have somewhat of a similar experience, there's comfort in that.
Yeah.
And in that particular film, Andreas's Highcad's film, Nuggets, there were a lot of things that I think made that film stand out, and I mean, not really, or, well, I guess in some ways, having a connection to some type of substance, abuse, whatever that substance is, maybe a form of focus on one thing, like you were saying, but a couple things that stood out were like stylistic choices. It was the only animated film that was shown. No dialogue, no text. It was all just kind of imagery and music. And I mean, music is a very powerful, impacting thing, but also what made the film stand out to me and was that it was, I think, one of the only films that really didn't have any hope at the end.
Yeah.
It kind of ended abruptly, and it was the only film that kind of stayed within its loneliness or the like negative impacts of the topic that it was talking about, whereas a lot of the other films had hope involved for them. Even which one was I thinking of? Will Mayo's First Night Out, there were some elements of it. So the way First Night Out, it was a very short film.
Yeah,
so
it might have been the shortest one.
It was. I think it's only 2 minutes.
The series that they showed us, yeah.
But it displays an individual like at a diner, and at first there's some like laughing in the beginning that almost kind of seems mocking.
Yeah, because it's from a group of people that the person in the film isn't with, so it's kind of like this it's almost like a haunting laughter, like you're not involved, ha ha ha, you know?
And so this individual is like all dressed up and has eaten their food and is kind of almost kind of appears unsure or like saddened, and then asks the waitress to take a picture of them, and then like I think writes the check, and then like picks himself up and like leaves the diner, and then you see like some hope within that, even in the span of 2 minutes.
I think it's like the interaction with the server that really kind of touched on that loneliness, because even the smallest interaction with somebody can really bring something more than you were even expecting, and it goes back to that connection. I think, like, you know, just saying hi to somebody on the street or subtle things can bring you out of the isolation that you're feeling. So I think that was like even at the end of that one, there was like some hope still. That one was one of the sadder ones as well. Yeah, and because it was so like short-lived, you didn't know what the outcome was going to be. Yeah. And so I think sometimes those films that like leave you in suspense or like without a conclusion make you kind of think more. Like, we're always striving for that, like, what's the ending? The ending needs to be happily ever after. Yeah. When kind of this reality.
Yeah, this reality or this battle with loneliness or like striving to find connection is kind of an ongoing process.
Absolutely. And it was interesting too, if you think about like the sequence of the films, like to relate that to your emotions too, because you kind of like brought on this roller coaster of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they really put you through it, you know? Sometimes you were laughing, and sometimes you were really sad, and then...
Sometimes you were, like, really thinking about it.
Yeah.
Or even I felt like there were some topics that were even introduced to me in some way, or expanded on, like, the small information that I knew, which I guess kind of goes into the other section of questions that I wanted to ask about, like, representation and the main issues and themes of these films, which, I mean, we've already kind of identified as being related around the topic of loneliness and unloneliness.
Yeah.
Obviously, since that was what the event was called.
Based around.
Yeah. But because it was such, like, a diverse list of films, it allowed for you to kind of think in so many different ways and from so many different perspectives. So for you, what do you think were, like, the three main issues or themes, like, of these films as a collective?
I think that connection was one, and I think that in that umbrella of connection would be, like, disconnection and connection, but together. That's one theme.
Yeah.
And I mean, individuality almost, because in every film we saw people, well, and Nuggets was the only one that didn't have people in it, which was also interesting if we think about it that way, but in the rest they did, like, the subjects of the film were people. And so I think that, like, in a way, identity or individuality was one of the major themes, because it just showed how much each person is different in so many different ways, or their interests are different, or their experiences are different, and we all, you know, experience loneliness in our own way, even if we relate to others. So I think that connection was one, individuality was the other, and then I guess that disability seemed to be a major theme in it as well, or maybe not just disability, but there was also a lot of films that contained some kind of illness, like with the Alzheimer's disease one,
so maybe,
or like a struggle, I guess we could, or no, because I don't want to say that.
Maybe also, like, representation, or, like,
representation. That's, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking of. I definitely thought of connection and individuality, because you kind of saw things from multiple perspectives. And then representation of kind of, like, how these different individuals were being represented, and in the topic of disabilities, how they were being represented.
Yeah,
well.
That's for sure what it is, because even with the, what was that one film? With the, was it Ralph? Who was experiencing some kind of dementia, I think, and even in that, I think that they talked about how it's always, like, portrayed as this horrible thing, when they were kind of, like, finding senses of joy in going through this together, which was really interesting.
Yeah, so the film Ralph kind of revolved around this couple. It was Ralph was the husband, and I'm forgetting the wife's name, but they met as researchers in the medical field, I believe it was, and Ralph was developing the first stages of Alzheimer's, and his wife talked heavily of the connection that they were still able to maintain through this process of Alzheimer's, which was a really interesting perspective as well, of like somebody going through Alzheimer's, as well as somebody who is who knows somebody going through Alzheimer's. And so Ralph's wife kind of talked about this connection that they were able to like make when they first met, and develop that over their years married together, and then even this kind of connection that they were able to deepen and strengthen through this experience. And one thing that stood out to me with that, actually it was a theme in both this film Ralph as well as the film Can You Read My Lips by David Terry Fine, and that film was kind of a brief summary of that film was a woman who was deaf was there was a repetitive can you read my lips, and the woman was touching on the difficulties of reading lips and the expectancy that deaf individuals have to
be able to read everybody's lips.
Yeah,
when everybody is so different and speaks.
Yeah, so
covers their mouth.
Yeah, they were talking about covering their mouth. People talk fast. People have facial hair, and so this.
They were cutting in and out of the audio.
Yeah, and they had captions on the screen, and then it would kind of fade out and fuzzy, and the audio as well as the captions would kind of disintegrate, and you would be left with just attempting to read these multiple individuals' lips. And it was talking about kind of the expression that goes into individuals who use sign language, and how sign language is this communication tool. It's another language,
and they were kind of saying that it's more exciting because people are more passionate when they're signing. It seems
because it
involves your body,
expressions and bodies involved.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting connection to the film Ralph, in this sense of connection can be made without words.
Yes.
And how what it means to have a connection, and it doesn't have to be a confirmation. It can just kind of be like a literal connection, or like a feeling and emotion that you're able to receive, and however you are able to communicate, like whatever that connection is, whether it is verbal, physical, or silent, people experience connection in different ways. So I saw a relationship between that theme in those films, and on the topic uh, of disability being represented in these films, and in terms of a theme of representation, it felt to me that it was from the perspective of people with disabilities, in a way of kind of, I don't know if I would say educate, but like
awareness maybe, but maybe not even awareness.
Just, or like further understanding.
That's
and I guess the films just like were very successful in representing, especially Can You Read My Lips, in the way that they kind of dissolved the audio and dissolved the captions. It was very well compiled in a way for you to somewhat understand like the perspective of a deaf individual, of like reading somebody's lips and kind of being forced and thrown into this one method of communication of like, oh, we just talk to each other. And so instead of somebody, learning sign language and communicating through that language, and instead of hearing people being forced to sign, and deaf individuals being forced to read lips, that or I shouldn't say like forced, but or like expected to. There's like this weird expectancy that we have with this kind of social model that
it doesn't embrace like
different
other ways
forms of
other
communication,
ways of communication,
or
it's
different,
just one way, and that's like what you're expected to be able to talk to somebody in, which is really, that is kind of strange.
And so putting this like pressure on an individual to adapt a certain way. The film Can You Read My Lips really kind of twisted that social idea and like this stigma around it, or constraint, that it was like, well, no, this shouldn't be the only way that adaptation happens. Adaptation can be flipped to the other side. And I just appreciated that form of representation, because I think it translated really well. Although I do believe that film was created specifically for people who have that social model in place, or those social ideas in place, and hoping to kind of alter that perspective.
Well, yeah, I mean, even for me, it like altered my perspective a little bit, and I'm, I wouldn't say that I have a lot of education on these topics, but it definitely like opened my eyes a little bit to what that dynamic means for them, because you just don't really think about it sometimes. I think that a lot of the films, I don't want to say empathy, but just like understanding of other people, it opened up an understanding. And even through like Throw, like people have different ways that they like to express themselves, or I honestly, even Nuggets, like, because you don't really put in this perspective the happiness that substance can bring people. And so, like, through all of these, there's a certain sense of trying to push across, not push, but like trying to relay an understanding for others, and like an open mind of, you know, not that substance abuse is good, but everybody has things that they go through, and everybody has different personalities, different traits, different, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's why the films were a really good collection to be displayed, because it showed so much variety, and yeah, just that kind of it left open that space to be like, here is some information. And also I think the way the event was set up, where like the panelists spoke and then they had some audience participation, allowed that discussion to happen, of instead of like, oh, here's this information, as you kind of may see like scrolling through your Facebook feed, or and you're like given these snippets of videos, and it's like, wow, that was empowering, like,
and that's
humanity. or whatever, and maybe those are kind of misrepresented as well, but you see them in short, and then it's like, but where do you go from that? And are you getting the facts from that? Is that real life? How are the people in those videos being represented? What would it be like to have a discussion around that? And so the way the event was set up, it allowed people to actually talk about it and be like, and in the sense of this this event, like the unloneliness, it was highlighting a subject matter that isn't discussed, and these films then just built off of that with so many other topics that aren't discussed, that should be discussed. And even if they're not discussed in huge lengths, or you don't study these topics, or you don't know them, it's like, well, let's
talk about it.
Talk about them.
Let's
be
start
able to
talk about them,
to become familiar. And I think having that openness and willingness to bring in that information will start to change those, or hopefully start to change those social ideas that we have about these different topics, and the stigma that comes with unloneliness, or
and also like a sense of like normality, because in a way, like being unlonely, they kind of like, society kind of makes you feel like you're, or being lonely kind of feel like you're not normal, that everybody is, you know, everybody's connected deeply with all these people, but like through these you really could recognize, like, no matter where you are, like there's a certain sense of loneliness for everybody, but then the ways that bringing it up, especially in this form, allowed it to be like, well, there's opportunity to connect with others, and I don't know, I think that was a really cool concept, like, to bring that in.
Yeah, definitely. And so one thing we wanted to do really quick was kind of do a live watch of one video, and kind of compare and contrast of like a film that we watched live as opposed to watched in the event, and kind of see how the differences and the experience affected us. So we're going to select a video right now and kind of do a live feel for it. And again, we're looking at, you can find more of these videos on the website of artandhealing.org, as well as they have a YouTube channel for the Unlonely project. But right now we're looking through the videos and seeing which one we should pick. We're kind of flipping through them, and there's some that were shown at this event. Like I see Throw and Ralph and Nuggets. And it's really interesting because there's, right now as we scroll through it, there's an animated film another animated film called Escapology: The Art of Addiction,
which was the other film was also
I'm
based on addiction.
Yeah, I'm so interested
why they choose to represent it as animated. I mean, yeah, I could talk about that, but I probably shouldn't because it would be a tangent.
Which one?
Let's do.
I mean, that looks like there's another animated one. Maybe we won't watch an 18 long minute video.
Maybe the Honey and Bears.
Okay, so Honey and Bears. It's a 3 minute and 33 second video, and the image looks like
swimmers.
4 individuals possibly synchronizing swimming. So let's watch it in a pool. Okay, here we go. Oh no, an error occurred. We can't watch that one. I wonder if it's the recording.
Let's see. I don't think so. Overcome camouflaged identity. Oh, that one's long. We could watch another animated. So we haven't watched. There was this one down here.
Oh, have you seen that one?
No,
I've seen it.
Oh, okay. Keep going. We gotta pick one that's new for both of us.
There's one right here. Have you seen this one?
No, that looks sad. Honestly, I don't want to bring my mood down. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that.
That's okay. Maybe there's not another animated one, but it's okay. What about this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna watch
because we can't really tell what it's about at all.
Called "Hello, I Like You," and the here it goes. Okay. There's a lot of texture just being represented on the screen. Looks like yarn.
It does look like yarn. There's a leaf.
Spinning on the camera.
It kind of looks like a stop motion.
Yeah, it does. Lots of yarn being shown. Light bulbs. Nuts and bolts. It's a tree twirling.
Interesting.
And then it says goodbye at the end.
So, I don't remember what this one film is called, but there's a very, I learned about it in my Andy Warhol class because we were looking over his amateur films, and there was like this one film, I think it's Mothlight or something like that. But basically, this person takes film strips and they put, instead of like filming something, they put like leaves and articles like organic matter and different moths and stuff like that into the film, and then they play that as the film. So it almost looks like a scan. It's like almost like scanner as camera in a way. That's kind of what that video
Yeah.
was similar to.
It almost felt like an animation.
I think I couldn't tell if it was an animation or if it was.
It was just a series of leaves and nuts and bolts, kind of like.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say tick-tocking across the screen. I don't know a word for that. But no words. No, or just kidding. There was words at the end. It just says goodbye. And then the title is "Hello, I Like You." And
so I guess we could break it down into what we saw being represented in the animations or in the stop motion, however we want to. I'm not positive how this was created, but there was leaves and
there were leaves. There was
a tree that they kept coming back to, which was definitely an animation.
There were like nuts and bolts or screws.
Nuts and bolts.
There was a lot of yarn being kind of twisted and plied together.
At one point there was a fence, or what looked to be a fence.
Yeah, there were lots of light bulbs flashing.
And street lights.
Yeah, and different shots of kind of outside nature. All kind of done in a stop motion, cut and go type way.
But it flowed together.
Like it was kind of playful.
Yeah, it was playful. Which makes me think about, I guess, like the world that we live in, of innovation and you have like organic matter, but also constructed pieces,
and that's what I was thinking
in our everyday lives.
And this idea of like the yarns twisting together was like how do these come together and move forward?
Kind of looked like DNA too.
Yeah,
the way that they were like
as things like
it.
evolve and change. How do we maintain that connection and like move forward?
Production.
Super deep.
Production of relationships.
Yeah, but
that one was a deep one. It didn't hand it to us like the other one did.
But then also I found it interesting in just another film being shown without any form of dialogue or narration, and the only word being goodbye.
And also the title, though, because I think, Hello, I Like You. Goodbye. I don't know exactly how to.
I almost kind of interpret it as this way of people who like come and go out of our lives.
That's what I was thinking too. And you like create these relationships, and then also there's a natural force in all relationships or connections to others, and like we all have our own lives, so we split off in different ways, and but it's not like, it doesn't have to be this dramatic thing. It can be like a gradual and natural flow of life,
and what it maybe means to kind of, when you come into contact with new people, and how you can kind of change and grow and evolve with them or from them, or little ways that you interact with new people, or what it means to be like introduced to, maybe it's not even a person, maybe it's a new idea or something,
right? Like how these ideas reflect into your life,
and how can you kind of maybe still maintain
a routine,
or like the parts of your identity that are strong, but then still kind of like
build on it, kind of like how we do every day as like human beings. Like we all kind of, I don't know, somehow human beings got together and created like societies.
I don't know how we did it.
Don't know how.
There are some good and bad parts about society.
Yes.
But it kind of took it to a very basic level of that too. Yeah. Just like natural materials. I mean, even metal is natural, and it was depicting metal in a lot of ways, and it just
and probably touched on the medium of film, but I don't think either of us are too familiar with that to be able to break that one down.
Yeah, but yeah, so then what was the experience like of like watching this live as opposed to like in the theater in the dark room,
right,
surrounded by other people dispersed throughout the theater? And how do you think that might have changed? Or
well, yeah, we are in like a brighter lit area right now, and there are other people around us.
Hello.
So but in a way they're not interacting with the same things that we're interacting with, so there is like a difference in being in a theater with everybody who's focusing on their attention to the one. They would be watching the film with us, so that's an interesting concept. But I think that overall being in the theater really helped a lot. One, it being on a larger screen, it kind of
wrapped in it.
Yeah, made it more theatrical, and
it like emphasizes everything. It just like enhances it. It's like, you're watching this video,
like you are in.
Yeah,
you are in.
You have no
video.
choice.
Yeah. Whereas for this one, we're watching it on a smaller screen and we're sitting together, and also like we were able to talk through it.
Yeah.
Which you're not able to do in a theater.
Yeah. I also feel like in a theater sometimes I'm less likely to like laugh or express my emotions. Yeah. Because I'm like, there's people around me, which
for some reason at that festival though I didn't really feel that way, because I still felt like we were able to turn towards each other and be like, why are they doing this to me?
Yeah, and maybe that's something about a theater too. There's like this there's different elements of privacy that you can have in a theater, like when the lights go down and you're like enraptured in it and you can let the tears roll down in a dark room.
Well, my question is like, how would this feel to be on the website looking at these by ourselves?
I think
in isolation.
I don't know, because there's some that are like feel good films and it's like that maybe you would want to share.
Yeah,
and
maybe
there's elements
one of these with someone from work. The last one, How to Be Lonely by Andrea Dorfman, because that one was just like so feel good and just said a lot about being your own person.
And the fact that they're short, you can get so much information by watching so many different films. And it has that shareability, being like, oh, this is a really interesting topic. It's discussed in a short, kind of really well done way. There's something about film that kind of represents things in a, like, you can be really creative with that, and it can put things into perspective in a really interesting way. And being able to share that, I mean, it's so fast paced. You can just be like, here's the link,
and it's free. Yeah, it's accessible, in opposed to a lot of the information that, I mean, I do feel like I'm getting at school. As great as all this information is for me, what happens when it's kind of this like jargon in a way? I almost feel like that with some of the feminism papers that I'm reading, that it's so complicated, and that's why like Bell Hooks has a book that's Feminism for Everybody, which it just like makes it more accessible, and it's a smaller book, and I appreciate information like that. And on this platform, you can have like the shorter films, and there's still that sense of accessibility because they're free and they're short and they're creative, so everybody can kind of interpret it in their own way, and you don't have to be like, it's easy to share the information to anybody, and of like anybody of all age groups too, because you don't really have to be able to read like 30 pages, which would take a really long time.
Theoretical text,
right? Of being lonely.
Yeah,
that would really put me through a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also a sense of discovery too, especially if you like if you go on the website or go on the YouTube channel and you can watch different ones, it's something that you can like, even like you mentioned, being like, oh, maybe I'll watch one of these films in the morning as I get ready, because it's short. It kind of like can uplift you if it is like an uplifting video.
And even if it's not, I don't know. I mean, there's something I've been thinking about too, like being kind of sad or having like a reaction to an artwork that doesn't make me feel as great. But at the same time, like you have to kind of like recognize all of these emotions because they are there. It kind of goes back to being able to communicate different things, like when we are sad or when we are feeling lonely, like is there a way that we can either have that inner dialogue with ourselves or with others to be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, and this could go in all different aspects. It doesn't even have to be about loneliness.
Oh yeah, but that recognition of kind of not ignoring it, but looking at the reality of it, or like acknowledging that those things are there, not kind of being, what's the word? Closed off?
Yeah.
Prejudice? No, not prejudice.
I don't know.
What's that word? I don't know.
Private? I don't know.
I guess, just kind of closed-minded or just ignorant. Yeah. Is that the word? I think that's the word.
All of the above.
A, B, C, and D. Yeah.
I do think that the format of them allows for accessibility.
It's like human.
Yeah, it's human and feels very genuine. And I do appreciate that it's not just from one person too. So you get different perspectives from different authors and filmmakers and creators.
And it's not also, I would say, like done in a showy way. It's like, here's this story.
Well, I think that they also said that not all of these people were like artists, and some of the people who made the films, actually it was like their first time creating something like this, so
did a damn good job.
That's pretty incredible to hear. But then it also goes into the accessibility thing where it's like, you know, it doesn't have to be this prestigious thing
and
to
even
be able
like
to talk about it, or
the shortness, the length of things, like with the First Night Out, it's so short. And I mean, even like, you know, your attention can be on that one thing, and you can get so much information in a short amount of time that you can really walk away, like even after 2 minutes, being like, wow, I learned something, or like I'm thinking about something,
right?
And it can be expanded into something so much bigger.
I think that the theater environment was adding to that sense, and then of like theatricality, probably more than you would get on the website, but still on the website it does like a totally different thing for you.
It's nice. It was nice for me, like discovering that there were more videos too, because I was like, oh, it's not just the films that were shown at this event. It's like there's more. I can learn more.
And you can pick too, like what topics you want, you know, if maybe one felt more personal to you, you can kind of like go into that. Also, the format of there being panelists, like you were saying earlier, like watching 3 films and having a discussion around it, and it not just being this like click, 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 and then all of a sudden at the end you don't remember any of the information that you just came into. And I think that maybe like even one of the themes of the entire event is discussion, or is communication in a way that like not only was it about being lonely, but it was about talking about it, or just like not just keeping that to yourself, and giving this a dialogue, which they did for the films as well, so not just the loneliness factor, but they did that for the films. And then in a way that allowed us to maybe understand things in a different manner than we would have, you know, watching it by ourselves.
Yeah, it allowed you like time to process it with other people, which I think was very appropriate to like unloneliness.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're able to be in a safe space where even if the topics are unfamiliar to you, you can bring up questions or thoughts that you had about it, and it's heard and discussed. And it eliminates that segregation that I think a lot of loneliness implies, because loneliness has a lot of stigma around it, and that's where even more segregation starts to happen. There's more distance that's created, and when we acknowledge these different topics and start to access information and educate ourselves and then start to open up to those conversations, it removes less of that and allows people to have more connections and create this wider sense of a
understanding or
and
community or
community
connection.
Definitely. And speaking of short times of films, this podcast has done the complete opposite of that, which is absolutely great. But I think that's kind of a good place that we can wind down and kind of close out of that huge long
well, I don't think that that's like too bad of a time. I think that we had a lot to discuss. So,
there was a lot of information.
There's a lot of information, and it's kind of nice to be able to have these
there's no time constraint.
There
shouldn't be. And I mean, if somebody wants to listen, they can, and if not, it's just a space to kind of archive our conversation, which is
absolutely
really nice. I don't want to edit any of this because there's weirdness to me of editing something out and like trying to correct or perfect.
We want it to be authentic and like we're having a conversation with whoever's listening.
Hello.
Which, if like you're gonna post this anywhere, I would like to hear or read or however people can interact with this. I would like to definitely be able to see thoughts and comments, or maybe even like any feedback about what they think of the films themselves. Maybe there's something that we missed or
didn't get a chance to talk about. Because that's what really helps, again, with the discussions with other people. They bring up points that you're like, wow, I never thought about that. Or like, I thought about that once, but then forgot about it. And then we can come back to it because you brought it up again. And I think that's the great thing about having those discussions or those connections or those things.
Absolutely.
So
thank you for listening, and thank you for hosting me on this beautiful platform that you so ever kindly started today.
Thank you so much for joining me. I feel like I'm a host on a show.
Hostess with the mostest.
This is really fun. I want to do this again.
Me too.
This and you should pick the topic or something.
We'll switch back and forth.
I'm really thankful for this kind of prompt from my class that allowed me to just try something that I never thought I would, and it felt so natural too, of just like recording. Because usually when you record, you're like, hello, my name is
okay, and thank you.
I mean, my hands are sweating a little bit, but I think that's just like my body. But yeah, I think we should definitely do this again. And so many random things we could talk about.
There's so many things.
So we could even just have like
fun.
more people on it, and
yeah,
the conversation just be like hit record and go. But yeah, I think we'll take a pause, take a stop on this, and say our farewells.
Yes.
Is there any last words?
Thank you so much to everybody who made the films. If this ever reaches them, I really appreciate you and your creativity with all of these topics.
Yeah, the amount of stuff that also goes into these films. Like, I just mentioned the names of, like, directors or, like, if it said creators, but, like, it listed so many other people that were involved in this.
Well, absolutely. Which, like, the films themselves are, like, in a way, like, creating this sense of connection because of how many people you need to interact with.
And that's, like, a part of me that felt weird when I was, like, putting the name next to them, because I was like, they're not the only people that were involved in this. Like, a director or even a creator is just, like, a small amount of what goes into making these films. Even if the films are, like, a minute long, there are so many people that have such an impact and a passion towards these films that make them so impactful to the audience or the people who get to access them.
Absolutely. So thank you to all of those people.
Thank you to everybody on the face of this earth.
Thanks everyone. Forever.
The end.
Just stop there. That's perfect.